Well, thanks for being with us. We'll get to some questions from the audience. I'm sure you guys have some very esoteric questions for this panel, but I have a few. So, of course, this year, it's the 50th anniversary of the film. They just released the 70mm and the 4K restoration.
In IMAX, right?
In IMAX,
yeah.
Can you believe that it's been 50 years? Is that kind of crazy?
Yeah, it is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel it in the morning when I wake up.
You look great, by the way. You look a lot better than you looked at the end of the movie.
I hope.
Yeah.
Listen, that was the oldest version at the end when I'm on the bed reaching up to the Monolith. That was a 12-hour makeup. And then when I did 2010, that was 18 years later. It was only 6 hours.
Wow.
But it wasn't
Funny how
exciting.
technology advances.
Yeah, I'll say.
Listen, I'm going to share something with you, because this is somewhat new. Because, as you can imagine, we're often asked, as the years go by, what is the ultimate meaning of 2000? What does it mean? And I've recently, within this last, a few months ago, read an occurrence of Stanley being interviewed and being asked that same question. And in that particular instance, he said, how do you explain in words Beethoven's Fifth Symphony? You can't. Every human being that listens to that piece of music has a different experience because we bring a different persona. And I can prove that because when you hear the music, the Blue Danube, what's the first thing you think of? Well, someone who's never seen Space Odyssey would probably think of Vienna or a river. Someone who's seen our film probably, most likely, will think of space. Which one of those two people is correct? They're both correct, because our film is filled with metaphor. And Stanley said that 2001: A Space Odyssey is a visual symphony. Just thought you guys might be interested.
We're getting right into it. I do want to ask, I think that if you ask most actors that have been a part of these films that turned out to be these films that changed everything, at the time they probably didn't have a sense of that, but I can't fathom that you guys didn't have a sense that you were a part of. Nothing like this had ever been done.
Yeah, I did. I knew I was a part of a very important release that year by MGM. I knew it was going to get a lot of attention, if no other reason than Stanley Kubrick by that time was a world-renowned director, but he did.
There's a kind of a reason. I'll just make it quick. I was a painter as a kid. I won a national poster contest my senior year in high school for all of America. So what am I trying to say to you? It means that I have a good eye. And I design homes and things like that. It's something I do in life. So I went to... I got a question. No? Somebody just being a smart ass? That's all right. I'm up here the same guy, so we'll deal. Anyway, I went to see the Stanley Kubrick movie in a little art house called the Music Arts on Wilshire Boulevard. It's now closed down. But the point that I wanted to make is I saw The Killing.
Okay.
And I walked out, and it was because I was a painter and like an artist. I walked over and looked at the movie poster. I'd only ever done that one time before, and that was for MGM's The Red Shoes of Moya Shear. But I was very young then, and I didn't really know what I was looking at. But I went and looked over, and it said Stanley Kubrick. And anyway, now I'll cut. 3 or 4 years go by. I'm going to UCLA. I'm a football player. It's September. I'm the only football player in the English and art department. And, well, it was lonely, but... Anyway, I was a big hustler when I was in college. I was a money lender. I was a bad person. And I sold football tickets and had Christmas tree lots, and I drove a Porsche. So now you know who I am. Anyway, the end of the story is I got the LA Times and I looked at it, and Keir's favorite movie by Kubrick is Paths of Glory. Right, Keir?
Yep.
Yeah. So I opened up the LA Times, and it says Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory is opening at the Egyptian in Hollywood. So when you're a football player, you have to go to a training table, both lunch, morning, noon, the first couple of weeks of the season. And then after the season's on, you only go at night. So I go to training table and I get my breakfast, and I turn, and we got these, I call them the Nazis. There's like football coaches are Nazis. And they're all like 8 or 9 of them there, and I said, I had my tray of food, and I said, Coach, I can't come to practice today. And 18 Nazi-like eyes bore a hole through me. And my buddies are going, what is he doing now? I was always kind of famous for getting out of stuff. The end of the story is I went downtown, I parked at the Grauman's Chinese, I walked across the street, and I saw Paths of Glory 3 times, and then I went back for dinner.
Well,
That's my Kubrick introduction.
so you knew.
How many people have seen Paths of Glory? I'm curious.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, for those of you who've seen it, I don't know if you agree with me. I enjoy that movie over and over again the way I enjoy Casablanca for different reasons. I think it's a brilliant film. But for those of you who see, you may not know, maybe you do. You know how it ends with these battle-worn troops who've been through hell and are making fun of this German girl who's singing to them. And they're hooting and hollering and clapping and making fun of her. But gradually, as the scene progresses, one by one, they start to become silent because she has such a sweet manner about her. And you realize that she becomes their sister, their mother, their daughter. And they become silent, and some have tears in their eyes. You might not know this, but that actress playing that part is the widow of Stanley Kubrick. They got married and were married the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah. But it really is. For those of you who haven't seen Paths of Glory, check it out. It's one of the great anti-war films with Kirk Douglas in the lead.
Yeah, and in fact, if you haven't seen any of Kubrick's pre-Strangelove career, I mean, he came out of old Hollywood and made, old Hollywood movies in the old Hollywood system, and you should definitely see those. Speaking of Kubrick, we all know him as the legends that are told, this mad genius, endless takes over, 200 times the length of the film shot, things like that. But for you guys, what was he like to work for? What was he like on set?
I loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
He was, I had just finished a film 6 months earlier, directed by Otto Preminger. If you want to know what he was like, I don't know how many have ever seen the film Stalag 17 about a prisoner of war camp during the Second World War. Well, Otto Preminger was the commandant of that prisoner of war camp, and that was Otto on a nice day. You can imagine what he was like the rest of the time. And then going from him to Stanley Kubrick was going from hell to heaven.
Yeah.
He was patient. He never raised his voice. You just knew that you were in the presence of genius.
Are you saying that he could have been one of the football coaches? Just a little aside to keep us on the level.
Yeah, there you go. And I mean, what was kind of when you finally saw the film? Obviously you guys are shooting your parts, and you're seeing the amazing set designs and all of these insane shooting contraptions, but you're not seeing all the other stuff he's shooting necessarily, the Don Man stuff and all that stuff. You're not necessarily on set for that. So when you finally see the film in a theater, as it's meant to be seen, what's your
it blew my mind. I mean, I don't remember. Did you go to Russia's, Gary?
I saw a lot of Russians.
I didn't see any.
I used to sit with Stanley and drink wine on Friday.
Wow.
We'd eat steak and drink wine and talk He knew, because I had been a painter and all that.
Yeah.
He kind of allowed me to watch. And I wanted to say this. During the selection process, when they were editing Stanley and Ray Lovejoy, they had to select, they had to keep sort of a, you might say, a symbiotic relationship of the visual activity in the film. And so a lot of the really absolutely, completely brilliant sort of, I don't know, I can't really explain it. Weird, strange, artistic shots were not in the film.
Yeah.
In order to get you to the second half of the movie, Stanley had decided to go kind of pretty straight.
Yeah.
But there's a shot of Keir playing, it never got to the screen, but I told you there's a shot of Keir, and he's playing player piano. Forgot about that. He's playing player piano, and as he's going like this, Stanley put the camera right behind him, say maybe like a 40 mil lens. And the depth of field of 40 mil lens is really long. Long lenses mean there's a short depth of field, meaning from here to there is all in focus. And the camera is right behind Keir. And I'm telling you, it's the most incredible thing I've ever seen, because like the old player pianos where you'd put in the paper player piano when it would come down and play and like roll like the paper, it was kind of designed like that. And all the notes were coming down. All the notes were coming down like this in front of Keir, and he had on headphones, remember? Yeah. And he's banging his head, bobbing his head, not like for apples, but he's kind of going like that for the tune. And it's so magnificent, I've never seen anything like it. And I keep looking for it in the final cut. And finally one day, years after I stayed friendly with Stanley, and I was at his house one day, and I said, there's a lot of great shots you've eliminated. And he said, I finally decided that I couldn't do those things in the first half.
Yeah.
Because we were gonna blow their minds in the second. So there you go. It was just a delayed reaction for you, the audience.
I would tell two stories about Stanley and his eye for exactitude. And the first one has to do with a scene. Well, two stories. I'll tell the first story first. You won't know what I'm talking about, right? But first or second. And this is something that my wife picked out. No one, about 3 or 4 years ago, in one of the screens, no one had ever noticed what I'm about to describe to you. Although recently, within the last week, someone who went to see one of the brand new 70mm prints did catch it because he heard it. He didn't understand the significance. My wife saw the significance. In the scene where Dr. Floyd is walking on the space station, and he's walking by and he's about to pass a group of Russian scientists, a man and 3 women, right, sitting there. Just before he arrives past them, there is a public address system, but in most of the prints, it's a little muffled. And unless you're looking for it, you probably didn't pay any attention. It's just a general public address system. And he sits down and so on. Well, my wife caught the fact that in one of the angles, one of the shots, one of the non-speaking Russian women has a blue sweater over the back of her chair. At another angle, there's no blue sweater. Now, what does that mean? The continuity woman had goofed. And obviously, Stanley caught it when he was editing. Now, it's the kind of thing none of us would ever know. I've seen that film so many times that I never caught it. Well, that public address system, I can only paraphrase it, was to the extent of, a blue sweater has been found. I'm urging people to go to the lost and found. So he put that. He wasn't about to let anything like that go, although nobody had ever caught it. And this is just a bit of show off on my part, but there was a scene in which I had to communicate with mission control regarding this part that may or may not go bad on the ship that both of us go out after. Anyway, it was the dialogue was technological gobbledygook to me. It was like learning a foreign language. It was really hard to memorize. So for weeks, and there was little dialogue in this film, so it wasn't like we had a lot of dialogue to worry about. For weeks I went over and over and over again, and we shot it. Well, Stanley decided in editing that it was redundant. It was too much like another scene where Mission Control speaks to us. So he cut it, he didn't use it. But to this day, I'll go to my grave, because I will never forget the speech. And went like this. I'll do it quickly. Mission Control, this is X-Ray Delta 1. At 1920 onboard fall prediction center and our 900 computer showed Alpha Echo 35 unit as possible failure within 48 hours. Request check your in-ship system simulator, also confirm your approval our plan to go EVA and replace Alpha Echo 35 unit prior to failure. Mission Control, this is X-Ray Delta 1, transmission concluded.
He does it, I kiss a kick out. I think I'm back in 1965 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9.
It's the 60s, it all blurs together.
I wanted to just say one thing before we go on.
Yeah?
I see some Star Trek types right here. And I did the pilot for Star Trek. Which maybe you know or don't know. Where no man has gone before. And I just want to give you a little bit of time here. Kubrick, the other guy. The other sci-fi guy, Roddenberry. He called me up and he said, okay, I'm going to give you 2 stories. First story is, he said, after we finished working for a whole year in the Lieutenant, a show I did for him, he said, I'd like you to come to my home for a meal. So I go to this beautiful house in Holmby Hill. He had a beautiful wife, not Majel, he had a beautiful wife. And he had a big, huge, fantastic home overlooking the city. And we both get pretty drunk. And we're standing out on his balcony. And he starts explaining Star Trek, telling me what he was gonna do. You know, I'm gonna do this thing, and these guys are gonna go through the galaxies, you know, the whole kind of everything and time. But the part that's funny is that we're drunk. So he says, I've got this one character. His name is going to be Spock. And he's going to have certain capabilities and kind of a strange thing and ears. And I said, oh. Now, actor-producers relationships, they're always a little bit deranged. They really are. They're worried about time and money, and you're worried about trying to get it right. So each has a career in a different area. So I look at him and he says, so who do you think I should get to play this guy Spock? And I go like this. You producers don't know anything about the goddamn artifact. Nothing. I said, to get a guy, you need a kind of a funny looking guy who's really talented. I swear to God I said that. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you gotta get some guy that's really disciplined. I mean, that can hold character. You can't get some Jim Carrey kind of guy all over the joint, you know? And Jim Carrey wasn't around then. It works now, doesn't it? You got the drift. So, he says, well, do you have anybody in mind? And I said, yeah, there's some guy I worked with about 5 months ago. Strange looking guy, real talented. And he said, remember his name? I said, well, he was a Jewish guy from New York. You know how the Jewish mothers name their kids, Harold and Marvin and stuff like that, Leonard. And he goes, Leonard? I said, yeah. He says, Nimoy? I said, yeah, that's the guy. He said, well, I thought you'd get a kick out of that story because now, of course, Nimoy's dead. But sorry about that, fellas. But Nimoy never did like me, and I never did like him as a person, so. But anyway, no, Nimoy was. I said to him one day, after some years, I saw him one day at the director's film. I said, congratulations on your success. Man, what do you say to a fellow actor? I mean, you know, you go away from home, you're going to be an actor, and he ends up doing incredibly well. He's a very wealthy man. And I said, congratulations on your success. And he turned and he went, oh, yes, like he didn't know who I was. And it really kind of pissed me off. I mean, he might have did Star Trek, but I did 2001.
Well, something might interest everybody. You know, I'm sure most of you know that there are no computer-generated special effects in 2001. Everything you see was photographed directly by something that was really in front of the lens. And sometimes people don't know how certain things were extraordinary physically, and I'll just describe one of the most difficult concepts that I had to be a part of, and they couldn't use a stuntman. And that was when my character, where Hal won't let me in, so I have to go into the emergency airlock. And if you look like it, looks like I'm blown weightlessly toward you, and then I bounce back, and then so how was that done? Imagine a ceiling almost 3 stories up there, and there's a hole in the roof of that ceiling. That hole is the opening to the airlock, and the pod is outside that. You don't see that in the shot, but you see the opening of the pod. Parallel to that is a platform on which I'm standing ready to dive head first toward the camera, which is on the floor 3 stories below. And I couldn't use a stuntman because, if you remember, I've forgotten my helmet, so it's got to be my face. And a circus roustabout has measured the drop, because I'm attached from the rear with a wire which is woven into a rope which goes up and to the side on that platform. And but the camera can't see the wire. Why? Because my body is between the wire and the camera. He's measured the drop. He measured it several times, and at each point he wove a huge knot, and he had very heavy gloves. So on action, I dove free fall, head first toward the camera. He's up there waiting for the first knot to reach his gloves. When it reaches his gloves, he jumps off and goes hurtling to the ground. I go hurtling back, and it was a block and tackle effect. So I went hurtling back up to the ceiling and grabbed, then he let go again. He's down there waiting for the second knot, which means I went hurtling back toward the camera again. And finally, I grabbed the mechanism that allows the oxygen to, but that's how that was done. Only one take, thank God.
For the sake of levity, I'd like to add a little bit of humor to that. I ran into a guy one day, I think after the film had been already like a masterpiece with the whole country. John Lennon bought 2 tickets to every showing for 1 year in Leicester Square. That's never happened in the history of cinema. Take that, Bob. I'm not really teasing. But anyway, this guy came up to me and he said, "Hey man, I saw your movie." And I said, "Oh, you did?" He said, "Yeah, whoa man." He's a stoner kind of guy. "Whoa man, that was really like some kind of movie, man." And I said, "Well, thank you very much." And he said, "So let me ask you, were you guys on acid when you did that?" Can you imagine making a masterpiece like that on acid? And I looked at him and I said, "Before and after, but not during."
His story reminds me of something somewhat similar. Well, not similar, but you'll see what I mean when I tell you the story. I don't know how many of you know that when the film was first released, it got, I would say 60% of the reviews were terrible. I mean, terrible reviews. And at the New York premiere, which was the second premiere, first it premiered in Washington, D.C., and then went to New York the next night, 250 people walked out. Wow. And MGM was very worried about the success of this film.
Yeah, they were almost going to pull it.
But within a couple of months, they were almost going to pull it. Within a couple of months, there were lines around the block. It became a hugely successful film. And the MGM people realized that, to a great extent, the makeup of those lines around the block were the young generation. It was the young people, you know, the age of the people who were protesting the Vietnam War. And that was about, and they were making it this success. So much so that the MGM figured maybe it was because they were all smoking funny cigarettes. So then they came out with a new poster. The new poster said, 2001: A Space Odyssey, the ultimate trip.
There's stories about people sitting in the front row and during the Stargate scene, literally sitting as close to the screen as possible.
A guy in San Francisco got up and walked right through the screen.
He ran down the aisle and jumped right up onto the screen, screaming, "It's God! It's God!"
Is there anybody here who saw the movie Opening Weekend and did acid? It's okay, we know you all did. I have two more questions I want to kick it out to you guys. You know, we've talked a lot about the aesthetics of the movie. Not only was the movie groundbreaking from a filmmaking standpoint, but aesthetically, I think every sci-fi thing ever is derivative of 2001. But aesthetically, everything feels derivative of, I look at this room and it feels derivative of 2001. I just can't, I guess I don't have a question. It's just, I think it's just so fascinating that it's just this living, breathing painting where you could literally take every frame.
I think it's fascinating.
It's just
we're still here.
Yeah.
We're in our 80s.
Yeah. I think too that is the evidence against Kubrick shooting the moon landing, because it would have looked a lot better than he shot it.
I've had to say that.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah.
My daughter had a boyfriend who was a very bright young Turk, and my daughter's you can look her up on the internet. She's very beautiful, a yoga instructor, has her own studio in Oahu. But her boyfriend one day said, well, he's no longer her boyfriend, as you can tell. But he said to me, "Hey, man, Stanley Kubrick, how did he fake the moon landing?" And I looked at him and I said, you know, it's one thing to live on the internet, it's another thing to be texting at stop signs, and it's another thing to be just plain stupid. As a matter of fact, I can tell you, I was doing a show, Keir and I on occasion do shows with astronauts. And Keir wasn't around, he was off working in the theater, he likes to do that. And, well, he enjoys it. So anyway, I'm in Arizona somewhere with a bunch of astronauts. And some guy came up to them and they were all drinking, a lot of them. And they're real cowboys. I mean, they're very intelligent men, they're near mathematical geniuses. It's real hard to be an astronaut. You have to have so many qualifications. And so they're all getting drunk. And some guy came up and said that, and I won't say the astronaut's name, but he got up and decked the guy.
Puzzled.
Yeah, one of them came up and he said, "Hey man, is it true that Stanley Kubrick faked the moon landing?" And I won't say the guy because I'm friendly with him, and he got up and went, bam!
It's okay, there's videos of him doing that on the internet as well. He's decked a few people, and it's glorious to watch. To show you how ahead of its time, kids, if you don't know your history, 2001 came out before we landed on the moon. And in some senses, may have inspired us to get there. So my last question before I kick it out to you guys, spinning off from the aesthetics, what are you guys most blown away? You know, it's crazy to watch that movie and then essentially have a very nice version of Hal in our pockets. I think that's why they made Alexa a soothing female voice. But it essentially, you know, it was prophetic in a way. What are you guys most blown away about in terms of the technology that, there's iPads in there, there's all this technology that we have now.
But you know, Kubrick had arranged with something like 40 different corporations to send him what their best guess would be in terms of whatever product they manufactured would be in the year 2001. So some of these ideas came out of these various corporations.
Apple, aesthetics-wise, owes everything, Johnny Ive to 2001, speaking of aesthetics. All right, let's kick it out to you guys. Yes, sir, so I'm going to go first.
Keir, can you please do your famous line?
Open the pod-play door, please, Al. My God,
Sorry,
this is a line I'm asking.
sorry, Dave, I can't do that.
This is a, oh God, what was it? This is what after you reach my age, suddenly you forget what your thought is. Sorry, I'll remember later. Go ahead. Next question.
Yeah, right here.
Have you ever asked that famous line to your phone?
Oh, to ask Siri and Alexa?
There's a parody with Hal on which I've seen, right? Where Siri is talking to Hal or vice versa? I can't remember.
Come Fury.
What?
Come Fury.
Oh.
Use the HAL 9000.
Hey Siri, open the pod bay doors.
We intelligent agents will never live that down.
So smart. Smart ass. You can't tell I made mine Australian somehow.
Hey, one day I asked Siri if she had a boyfriend, and she said, I don't really have time to get into that.
All the way in the back.
Hi, I'm from Expo, and I came here to see you guys.
Wow.
What if you had a chance to say something to Stanley Kubrick, if he was right here? What would you say to him?
Que lástima usted está muerto.
I would just say, Stanley.
You didn't get it. That was funny, I think. Anybody get that?
I don't speak Spanish.
Somebody get it? Tell them what I said.
Stanley, you're dead.
Stanley, I'm sorry, you're dead.
Thank you. Appreciate that, kid.
I would just say, Stanley, I thank you from everything in my heart. Thank you so much for making me a part of your brilliant film.
Wow.
Thanks guys for coming. We appreciate your movie very, very much. I watched it as a kid, but I just wanted to know what your interpretation of the ending for each one of you was when you first saw the movie, and did it change later on?
I don't think it changed me, but I certainly have my own interpretation. But like I say, it's only mine. Just like I mentioned, the symphony aspect of this, it can be many things to many people. I think it was a just as when the leading ape throws the bone into the air and it morphs into actually you may not know this, it's not just a space vehicle, it's a nuclear weapon in constant orbit around. So the first weapon morphs into the most recent method weapon. That's how it's illustrated, that transformation is expressed in the movie. The next major transformation is the one that leads to the fetus. And what is that? Well, I think it's just a metaphor. I think just as we build in the zoo, if we capture a polar bear, we put an artificial pool in the cave and so on to make him feel at home. Well, the presence of the aliens who are causing this transformation and that journey that I make in the hands of the aliens, even though we never see the alien, we only see the monolith, the expression of the alien, is I may have walked through the Louvre Museum and looked at a room like that with those paintings, and they were interested in the detail of it. They say, oh, habitat. So we'll make them feel at home while I'm going through the transition that eventually results in the fetus at the end. But you know what? It's less interesting to try to be too specific about this film. There's so many things that this film holds in terms of interpretation, and all of them are valid.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one little answer to that. Did anyone here read Melville's Moby Dick?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my God, we don't have any readers here. 4 of you read Moby Dick? What did the white whale mean to you? There's a whole lot of concepts about that. I mean,
It also got bad reviews. When it first came out, it got terrible reviews.
yeah. Oh yeah, Melville died in a debtor's prison. Stanley didn't die in a debtor's prison.
You know another movie that
He
was
died being frozen.
another movie that was a total failure was It's a Wonderful Life. So what do people know?
No, 2001 was not a failure.
No. When it came out. Yeah, box office.
For
Yeah.
about a month.
Yeah. Ready?
Yeah, thanks very much. I just wondered if you could comment on Arthur C. Clarke and his involvement. Was he involved with the film at all, or?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. Just
Well, he wrote a short story which was published in about 1950
The second?
in a science fiction, British science fiction magazine, then it was republished here, which I read when I was 13 years old. It's called The Sentinel. And, but I tell you, if any of you would like the details of how this film was made, which goes into great detail about the relationship between Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley, and it's the best. I learned more about this film that I am in than I ever knew from reading this book. It's just out this year, and it is in its 10th publishing.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Not publishing.
Printed.
Yeah. It's in its 10th print. It came out in March or April.
Is that the Michael Benson?
Michael Benson. Look it up. Google Michael Benson and the name of the book, 2001: The Space Odyssey, and there's more to the title. But look up Michael Benson. It is a brilliant, brilliant book.
Awesome. All right, so we got time for two more. Yeah, right here.
Me?
Yeah.
All right. As a big fan of science fiction and artificial intelligence, what was it like shooting the scenes with HAL 9000, who is basically just a disembodied voice?
You still haven't met that actor, right?
No, he's a Canadian actor.
Wow.
I don't know if you know that, but Douglas Rains, for those who are very into live theater, he is known as the Laurence Olivier of Canada. He played all the great leading roles in Shakespeare at Stratford. That's what he was most famous for. He's still living. He's still living, and he lives in Stratford. No, he didn't. This was the voice of Hal for us. It was, you may or may not know that the film was filmed in England entirely. So the crew, for the most part, was British. And Stanley just decided to have the assistant director, Derek Cracknell, do the voice of Hal for us. After about a week with an English actor, no, it's too British. I'll worry about it later. So this is the voice of Hal for us. Oh, I'm afraid I can't do that. Oh no, it was all like this. And that was the voice of Hal.
Hal's like offering
That
to
took a
sweep
little acting.
Hal's offering to sweep your chimney. It's a great question. All right, last one. All the way in the back. Very back. Very, very back. Yeah. What was your life like after 2001?
To be totally frank, it didn't affect my career that much.
Wow.
Other things certainly. I don't know whether because it didn't do. No, I don't know. It did do well eventually. It did not have a great effect on my career.
Do you think we're failures now?
Well, I worked a lot after that.
Teasing, kid. I didn't want you to not become an actor because of these two old men.
I'll say all the
A lot of
things.
people look at us, because we're actors. I'm not kidding you. And they think because we do autograph shows and we go out and do these things,
Yeah.
that we're poor. I mean, nothing personal, but we're not poor.
Thanks to you guys, and I will say, everything that happened in your life after 2001, that's why you're here. And we could not be more honored to have you here. Thank you so much. One more question, I'm sorry, I gotta ask. In the scene where you're in the pod and Hal is reading your lips, you guys improv your conversation. What were you talking about? What was that conversation?
Well, actually, Stanley felt that the scene was too long. So when they were setting up the next shot, very often they had a lot of time. You can imagine it was so technically difficult that sometimes the setup would take 3 or 4 hours. So we had this time. We would meet with Stanley and we'd do an improvisation on that longer scene, and he would record our improvisation, and we'd get a new version of that. and we'd improvise on that until it got shorter and shorter until it arrived at what you see in the film.
Wow.
That's how that was done.
Someone
I
who,
actually, Phillips, I actually was down in Spain working on a movie about 5 months after. And I got a tape from Stanley asking me to change one of my rebuts to you. You can't tell which it is, but so Kubrick, we had these UR400 reel-to-reel, both of us. And I had the thing with me down in Spain. And so Stanley sends the new line to the line that I'm to, he sends down the line, the original, and the line I'm gonna replace. So I tried all these different things, and finally, this has got a humorous ending. So I finally sent back a version of the new line. And when I got back into London, like, a year later, I had a meal with Stanley. And he said, hey, you did a good job on that. He said, you did a great job. How did you make it? And I said, well, I was in Spain, and I put my UR4000 in a closet. And then I sent the line through the door, and that didn't work. So then I put the speaker, we had speakers like this, remember, Flo? And I put it in a pan, and then that didn't work. Then I put towel, and eventually, so here this incredible high-tech movie has me outside a closet somewhere in Spain talking into a microphone with towels over the top of a stew pot.
that's movie making, kids. Give these guys another.
Thank you for watching the Convention Junkies coverage of Fan Expo Canada 2018. Join the conversation below with a comment, and don't forget to like and subscribe to see more. If you would like to help us with future projects, please visit our Patreon page.